You'd think being called chief of neurosurgery might buy you a moment of respect. But that afternoon, I stood in a hallway lined with cold tile and fluorescent light, clutching a clipboard still damp from OR sweat, and all I heard was, "She's your sister, works in a hospital, and still couldn't do a damn thing." It was my uncle's voice, loud, careless, sharp, and my parents didn't flinch. Not a word, not a correction, just silence, like agreement. My name is Liora Wren, and for most of my life, I've been the extra seat at the table, the one they only remembered when someone needed a ride, or a reference, or a spare key. I didn't mind, not at first. I told myself I was just different, more focused, more serious, less lovable. But then my sister nearly died. Tessa, their pride, their golden girl. She was 33, vibrant, reckless, and beautiful, until a car wrapped itself around a tree on a rainy Tuesday evening. When the emergency transfer came in, the staff only saw a name, Tessa Wren. To them, she was just another patient. To me, she was a girl I once carried home barefoot when she scraped her knee on the church steps, a girl who hadn't called me Leah in 15 years. I didn't tell anyone I was her sister, didn't flinch when they wheeled her into my OR, unconscious, bleeding into her brain. I just scrubbed in. I didn't do it for them. I did it because sometimes you love people who forget your name, and you save them anyway. But what happened next? When the nurse thanked me, bowed her head, and said, "Chief Wren, I didn't know she was your sister." That's where this story really begins. There's a letter on my kitchen counter. Cream cardstock. Blue ink. Too much perfume. I haven't opened it. Not because I'm avoiding it, but because I already know what it says. Sunday lunch. Tessa's flying in. If Leora's not too busy, she's welcome to stop by. Not our Leora, not your sister. Just me. Like I'm the awkward coworker they feel obligated to invite. I live alone now in Seattle, 2 blocks from the hospital. My apartment is tidy, functional, and silent. After back-to-back brain cases, I come home to frozen dinners and the hum of my fridge. No one waiting, no one to ask how my day went. My family's in Iowa, small town, Sunday casserole type. Dad used to fix tractors. Mom taught 4th grade until she didn't. They liked things simple. They liked Tessa. Tessa was sunshine, bubbly, golden-haired, always laughing too loud at church functions. She wore matching bows and always knew who was watching. When she cried, people rushed in. When I cried, I was told to stop being dramatic. I was the serious one, the odd one, the girl who wanted an anatomy kit for Christmas and memorized Latin terms for fun. At 13, I was already being called too sharp and a little off. One of my mom's friends once said, "Leora's bright, but she's clinical." Clinical, like something sterile. Something you use, then discard. There's a photo in my wallet, medical school graduation. I'm stiff in a white coat, eyes hollow from exhaustion, holding a certificate no one back home asked to see. Dad came, but stood in the back, arms crossed. Mom said she had to help Tessa get ready for her college sorority mixer. That night, I stopped expecting anyone to show up for me. I got a text this week from my brother-in-law, Ethan. Mom says lunch is at 1. Tessa wants to see everyone. If you're around, not, we'd love to see you. Not even hi. I closed the message and scrolled social media. Someone from my high school posted a family picture, stopped by to see Mrs. Wren. Tessa, still as stunning as ever. Her sister's a doctor or something, I think. Didn't catch her name. Didn't catch my name. I closed the app and walked to the bookshelf where I keep my old photos. One shows me and Tessa at the lake. I may be 7. She's 4. She's grinning, cheeks full of marshmallow, arms around my neck. I'm staring into the lens with an intensity far too serious for a child. Like I knew one day I'd need to remember I was there too. Sometimes I wonder, if I vanished, how long would it take for them to notice? It was a Friday evening. I had one more consult before signing out. I was already halfway into a protein bar when my pager went off. Stat request. ER. I answered expecting a subdural or a post-op bleed. Transfer from St. Luke's. the trauma nurse said. 33-year-old female, car accident, GCS 7, suspected intracranial hemorrhage. We need neurosurgery on standby. Can you take the case? I said yes. And then the name lit up on the screen. Tessa Wren. I stared at it, pulse hammering. I didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then I said what I'd trained myself to say for years. She's a patient. Treat her like any other. I didn't tell the team, didn't say a word. The nurses didn't know. The residents didn't know. And I needed it that way. Emotion doesn't belong on the operating table, especially not when someone's life, someone's memory, identity, movement, is one miscalculation away from vanishing. When they wheeled her in, I saw her face. Pale, swollen, blood in her hair. Her vitals were dipping. Her pupils were reactive, but sluggish. The CT showed a growing hematoma pressing against her brainstem. She looked nothing like the girl who once stole my eyeliner and laughed when I got grounded for it. She looked like a stranger who used to mean something. I scrubbed in, not shaking, not crying, just bracing. 7 hours of bone drills, clamps, suction. The kind of surgery you don't walk away from clean. And the whole time I kept thinking, if Mom knew I was saving Tessa's life right now, would she even want me to? I didn't go home that night. I sat in the staff lounge, head tilted against the vinyl couch, scrubs stiff with dried sweat and antiseptic. The surgical report sat untouched beside me. Post-op status, stable, patient, remains intubated, vitals holding. That was the technical truth. The real truth was quieter. Tessa's life was suspended between breath and brain function, and I was the only reason it hadn't slipped away completely. But no one knew. I intended to keep it that way. The next morning, I returned early, white coat pressed, badge clipped, notes in hand like armor. I told the attending I wanted to monitor the critical case personally. No one questioned it. I had a reputation for being thorough. Tessa had been moved to the ICU overnight, still sedated. The swelling had eased slightly, but her neurological response was sluggish. She'd asked for water once, then drifted back to sleep. The nurse on shift said she might not remember much when she wakes. Sometimes that's a blessing. I stood at the glass window of her room, staring in. She didn't look like someone who used to braid her doll's hair while I recited Latin bone names to myself. She looked small, quiet, no audience, no laughter, just a still body surrounded by blinking machines. I didn't request direct contact. It was easier that way, cleaner. I could be the surgeon, not the sister, not the shadow. But at 9:42 a.m., I heard the shuffle of voices down the corridor. My family. They entered like they always did, in a unit. Mom first, arms wrapped tight in a cardigan she didn't need. Dad behind her, stoic and unreadable. Ethan trailing, face drawn and sleepless. Their eyes scanned the room, looking for someone to explain, someone to praise or blame. I stayed back, half shielded behind a medication cart. Mom rushed to Tessa's bedside, clutching her hand. "Sweetheart, you're okay, baby? You're okay." I heard Ethan ask the nurse softly, "Who did the surgery?" She didn't answer right away. I silently begged her not to. Then a new nurse walked by, young, eager, too honest. She smiled and said, "Dr. Wren, she was the lead. Brilliant, really. Said she'd stay until the patient stabilized. I think they're sisters?" Silence. Thick and instant. I didn't turn around. I didn't move. But I felt it. Every pair of eyes locking onto me behind that glass. Shock. Maybe confusion. Maybe guilt. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing my face. I walked away. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just away. Down the corridor, past the quiet telemetry rooms, into the courtyard, where I sipped lukewarm coffee that tasted like cardboard. I sat on the far bench, facing a dried-up fountain, and waited. They found me, of course. Mom sat beside me first, not close, just near enough to speak. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry. It was small, frail. I kept my eyes on the fountain, because if I had, You would have asked for someone else. That's not true. It is, I said flatly. You've always believed Tessa needed protection. I was just the cold one, remember? Too rational, too clinical. She didn't argue. Ethan hovered nearby. Thank you, he managed, voice catching on the words. Dad didn't speak, just nodded. His go-to gesture for emotions he didn't know how to feel. I stood. I don't need credit, I said. I just needed her to live. And I left them there, beneath the humming buzz of hospital lights, sitting beside a girl they still didn't truly see. 2 days later, I received an email. It wasn't from my mother, or my sister. It came from the hospital's administrative coordinator, flagged as a memo. The Mathers family invites ICU staff and surgical team to a private lunch, in gratitude for their daughter's recovery. RSVP below. It hadn't even been sent directly to me. It was routed through internal channels, as if I were a nameless cog in the machine that just happened to show up. I clicked accept. The lunch was held in the hospital's south atrium, a wide, echoing space with borrowed white linens and silver balloons tied to folding chairs. A banner stretched across the far wall, in cursive navy. Thank you for saving Tessa. It looked like something you'd hang at a PTA bake sale. The food was catered. Lukewarm pasta, tired Caesar salad, lemonade already losing its fizz. I arrived early, blending in with the blur of scrubs and white coats. My badge turned discreetly. I wore the same charcoal blazer I'd defended my thesis in, the sleeve still a little too long. No one greeted me, no one pointed. I wasn't surprised. Midway through, my mother stood and tapped her glass. She was wearing a floral scarf I hadn't seen in years, something she used to wear to Sunday service when she wanted to impress the choir ladies. We are so deeply grateful, she began, voice steady, measured. We never imagined a recovery like this. Tessa is alive because of the brilliant, compassionate team at this hospital. Her eyes swept the room, but not toward me. She named no names, gave no specifics. Her smile was soft, her tone sincere. And yet, I didn't exist in it. To each of you who held her hand, who fought for her, who didn't give up, we thank you. You are our heroes. Polite applause rippled across the room. I didn't move. I didn't clap. Beside me, an older nurse leaned in. Her gray hair was pulled into a no-nonsense bun, and her voice was dry with amusement. Strange, she whispered. I thought they'd say your name. I smiled faintly. I'm used to being invisible. Afterward, as people began filtering toward the exits, tossing paper cups and scraping plates, I made my way out through the side hall. The hallway was cooler, quieter, flanked by vending machines and old bulletin boards. That's where Ethan caught up to me. His tie was loosened, his face pinched with something between guilt and confusion. You're not mad? He asked, his voice lowered. I stopped walking. No, I said. I didn't do it for acknowledgement. He nodded slowly, but I could see the question in his eyes. Then, why did you come? Why stay at all? I didn't answer, because truthfully, I wasn't sure. I didn't want gratitude. I wasn't chasing forgiveness. But a part of me, a part I tried to ignore, had hoped for one sentence, one glance, one moment of, that's her. It never came. Back in my office, I poured myself a stale cup of coffee and sank into the chair with the creaky arm. The late afternoon sun spilled across the bookshelf, illuminating my degrees, my awards, my framed letter from Johns Hopkins. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. I played it. Dr. Wren. A woman's voice said, warm but formal. This is the State Surgical Council. We're pleased to inform you that you've been shortlisted for the Northwest Leadership Committee on Neurological Advancement. The announcement will be public next week. Congratulations! I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in days, I breathed all the way in. Validation, not from family, not from old photos or empty toasts, but from people who didn't know my history, who didn't ask if I smiled enough, who didn't forget my name. Recognition, not for being agreeable, but for being excellent. A week later, I was invited to speak at a regional conference. Women in Neurosurgery, Quiet Leadership in a Loud World. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stood backstage in a fitted blazer, notes in hand, watching the audience filter in. Row after row of brilliant, exhausted women, some in heels, some in sneakers, all carrying the same weight. Be exceptional, be silent, and smile while you do it. As I stepped onto the stage, I spotted her. Tessa. She was seated near the back, hair still thin from trauma, expression unreadable. Ethan sat beside her, jaw tense. I didn't falter. I spoke about what it meant to lead when no one cheered, to heal when no one thanked you. I spoke about standing in rooms full of people who forget your name and saving their lives anyway. The applause afterward was kind, but what shook me more was what came next. As I stepped down from the stage, Tessa stood. Her voice barely carried across the space. "You're not invisible, Liora, not to me." I didn't answer. I wasn't ready for the kind of hope her voice carried. Later, she asked if we could grab coffee, just the two of us. We met at a cafe tucked between a bookstore and a bike repair shop. Chipped mugs, soft music, nothing performative. She stirred her tea for a long time before saying, "Do you remember when I fell off the porch when I was 6? I nodded. "Split your knee open. I patched it up in the kitchen." Her eyes welled. "And Mom told you to stop pretending to be a doctor, that you were making it worse." "I remember," I said quietly. She looked at me. "Turns out you weren't pretending." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't. When we left, she hugged me, soft, uncertain. And for the first time in years, I let myself hug her back. The memorial was held at Hawthorne Hall, white lilies on every table, a slideshow looping through decades of family photos. It was for my grandfather, the only one who ever saw me without a filter. He once told me, "You don't need their spotlight, Liora. You are your own light. They'll see it when they squint hard enough." I went, not for them, but to keep a promise to him. The room was dressed like a wedding, only quieter. There were portraits of Tessa, one from prom, one from college, one from after her accident, pale but smiling. Ethan had a framed shot beside our mother at some school fundraiser. I had one photo, a childhood shot. I was in the center, but the way it was cropped, my face was half cut by the frame's edge. Someone nearby squinted and asked, "Who's that?" My mother replied without hesitation, "Some distant cousin." I didn't flinch, but something tightened inside me, sharper than sadness, cleaner than anger. Then came the speeches. Ellen, my mother, stood with practiced poise, speaking of legacy, family, and gratitude. She thanked Tessa for her courage, Ethan for his support, the hospital staff for their miraculous work. She named nurses, janitors, even the chaplain. Not once did she say my name. Ethan shifted beside her, clearly uncomfortable. He leaned forward as if to speak, but his wife gently placed a hand on his arm. He sat back. Then, unexpectedly, my great-uncle Robert stood, old, stooped, but clear. "I just want to say something," he said. "Dr. Liora Wren saved that girl's life, in case anyone forgot." The room stilled. Forks paused. Eyes darted. My mother smiled tight. "Well," she said softly, "that was her job, wasn't it?" I rose, not out of anger, out of necessity. "It wasn't a job. It was family," I said. My voice didn't tremble. "And just because I wasn't loved the way others were, doesn't mean I wasn't worthy of it." From my purse, I pulled a folded note. My grandfather's last letter. I read just one line aloud. "Let your kindness be your compass." Then I walked out, not waiting for applause, not needing to be stopped. They could forget my name all they wanted. I knew it, and I had said it loud enough to echo. 6 months later, I stepped away from the title. No more chief of neurosurgery. No more 3 a.m. pages or 15-hour marathons under cold light. Instead, I took a part-time faculty position at a local community college, teaching anatomy to students who reminded me of a younger version of myself. Quiet, underestimated, tired of being told they didn't belong. On the first day, I stood at the front of the class and asked, "How many of you have been told you're too cold, too much, or not enough?" Half the room raised their hands. I nodded. Then you're exactly where you need to be. Later that week, someone left a plain envelope on my desk. No return address. Inside was a photo. Tessa, still in her hospital gown, holding my hand. Her handwriting on the back read, "I told Mom and Dad everything. They didn't know what to say. But I did. I'm proud to be your sister." I framed it, hung it between my degrees. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because for the first time, it felt like I wasn't holding it alone. Some wounds don't disappear, but some grow soft enough to stop bleeding. And that, finally, is enough for me.